Good night, and if the night has not yet come, then just put aside everything that requires you to make quick decisions and clear answers. Because today we're going on a journey where there are no answers, but there are questions. The most important questions. Have you ever thought not about death? We all think about it sometimes, but about its opposite, not in a religious sense, but in a simple, mundane way. What if I could just keep going to see how the light from your window changes after 100, 300, 1,000 years? To hear music that has not yet been invented, to find out how the history of mankind will end? We call it immortality, and it seems to us that this is something out there, far away, magical, from fairy tales about the philosopher's stone or digital utopias. That this is an elixir that needs to be found somewhere, to derive a formula, to make a discovery. What if I tell you that the formula has already been written? It is not written on a single tablet. It is broken into fragments. And these fragments, like clues in the greatest detective story of all time, are scattered across the most unexpected laboratories of history, from the stuffy, natron and myrrh-scented funerary crypts of ancient Egypt to the sterile, cold server rooms of modern corporations whose algorithms try to predict, and therefore cheat, time. It's not going to be a story about magic. This will be the assembly instructions, the instruction that humanity has been writing, erasing, and rewriting for the past 5,000 years. Every epoch, every genius, every madman made his own correction, his crutch, his brilliant miscalculation. Today we will try to put these fragments together. We will visit 5 laboratories, 5 attempts, and in each one we will find not only a brilliant epiphany, but also a fatal mistake, a fatal omission. This will be our quiet nightly investigation. The investigation is titled The Formula of Immortality, From Egypt to Google. And before we step into the first of these laboratories, into the twilight of the Egyptian necropolis, I need to tell you one important, simple, and very personal thing. This channel, these stories that are playing in your headphones while you fall asleep, they exist only because you are here. YouTube doesn't monetize small, quiet islands like ours. There are no grandiose budgets here, only my interest in these stories, and I really hope so yours. Therefore, if these overnight trips mean something to you, if they have become part of your bedtime ritual, there are 2 gestures that mean more to me than any monetization. The first one is a subscription. This is the most honest way to tell the platform, this place has value. Let others come here who also need the same quiet place for thoughts before going to bed. It's a nod to me that I should keep looking for these stories. And the second one is a simple like. Not for the sake of algorithms, although they see it too, but just as a sign to a friend, a comrade in this night's vigil. Yes, I am here. I'm listening. I'm interested in that. It's like having a conversation with a nod in the dark. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be your guide on these journeys. It's a great honor. Now dim the lights, make yourself comfortable, and get ready for the first step. We are going to ancient Egypt, but we will not go to the pyramids. We'll go lower, into a perfectly dry, dark space soaked in sacred resins, where the world's first engineers of eternity worked. Their method was brilliant. Their mistake is fundamental. And it all started with her. It begins not with a thought, but with a smell. Close your eyes and imagine it. Not the dry, clean scent of desert wind, but something thick, sacred, and unsettling. The tang of natron, a crude, powerful salt hauled from dried lake beds. The rich pine sap sweetness of myrrh, worth more than gold by weight. The earthy, fungal smell of linen, miles of it, bleached white by the relentless sun. This is the perfume of the first laboratory. This is the smell of humanity's first organized, full-scale war against oblivion. Forget for a moment the pyramids. Those are just grand stone headlines. The real story is underground, in the cool, dark silence of a rock-cut tomb. Here, the ancient Egyptians, with the precision of master engineers and the faith of true believers, wrote the opening chapter in our species' manual for cheating death. Their formula was breathtakingly simple, monumentally literal, and ultimately fatally flawed. Their logic was impeccable. They observed the world and saw a clear division. On one hand, the corruptible body. It bled, it aged, it failed. On the other, a collection of eternal spiritual entities, the Ka, life force, the Bue, personality, the Ache, glorified spirit. The problem, as they defined it, was one of real estate. The spirits needed a home, a permanent, recognizable, intact home. If the BA winged its way back from the perilous journey through the Duat, the underworld, and found its body in ruins, it would be annihilated. Poof. True final death. Therefore, the equation was derived: immortality, the perpetual preservation of the physical form. They weren't trying to live forever in the sense of walking and talking through centuries. They were creating a divine battery backup, a failsafe. They were ensuring the system, the complete human system of body and soul, could reboot for eternity in the field of reeds. And so, they launched the most ambitious project of material preservation the world has ever seen. Think of it not as burial, but as a sacred technical process, a 70-day protocol. The body is taken to the Per Nefer, the house of beauty. The first step is surgical, but not for healing. The brain, considered useless mush, is meticulously liquefied and extracted through the nose with a long, hooked bronze rod. Then a swift ritual cut on the left flank. The lungs, liver, stomach, intestines, the organs that decay fastest, are removed. They are not discarded. They are cleansed, dehydrated, and placed in limestone or alabaster jars, the canopic jars, each under the protection of a son of Horus. Hapi the baboon guards the lungs. Imseti the human guards the liver. Duamutef the jackal guards the stomach. Kebasenuef the falcon guards the intestines. The heart, the seat of intelligence and emotion, stays put. It would be needed for the final weighing against the feather of Maat. Now the core process. The body is packed inside and out with natron salts. It is left to dry, not in the sun, but in the shadowy, controlled dryness of the workshop. For 40 days. The natron does not burn, it sucks. It pulls every ounce of moisture from the tissues, leaving the body a lightweight, leathery shell, but perfectly recognizable. No bacteria can survive this. It is a state of suspended animation achieved through chemistry, not magic. After 40 days, the body is darker, shriveled. The priests get to work. The desiccated cavities are stuffed with rolls of linen, aromatic spices, sawdust, sometimes even onions to restore a lifelike shape. The skin is massaged with precious oils and resins, cedar oil, palm wine, myrrh, which seep into the tissues, acting as a natural plasticizer. Then the wrapping. This is not hasty bandaging. It is an act of creation. Each finger and toe is individually wrapped. Layers and layers of the finest linen, hundreds of yards. Amulets are placed at specific points. A gold wedgeot eye over the incision, a scarab over the heart inscribed with a spell from the Book of the Dead to prevent the heart from testifying against its owner. The arms are crossed over the chest. More layers, more resins, now heated into a sticky black pitch that seals the linen into a solid protective cocoon. Finally, a painted mask, idealized but personalized, is placed over the head. A portrait for the soul to remember. The result is not a corpse. It is a masterpiece of bioengineering, a durable, non-perishable data cartridge meant to hold the essential code of a person. They had solved for X with the tools they had. If eternity requires a vessel, make the vessel eternal. Now let's hook this into our modern mind. What is the Egyptian method, if not the ultimate form of hardware preservation? It's the equivalent of us taking our most precious, irreplaceable device, say the first laptop that held our life's work, our photos, our memories, and instead of just backing up the files, we encase the entire machine in a block of transparent, indestructible aerospace polymer. We seal it in a vault with a perfect power supply and say, there, the machine itself will last forever. Therefore, what's inside is safe. We fixate on saving the container, believing the contents are inextricably tied to it. And here in this magnificent, logical, and deeply physical process lies the first great error, the fatal flaw in laboratory number 1. The Egyptians preserved the map with unbelievable fidelity, but they lost the territory. They saved the telephone, but the line went dead forever. They built a faultless, eternal shell for a ghost that had already slipped away. The error was a confusion of correlation with causation. They observed that a rapidly decaying body seemed to accompany the disappearance of the person, the laughter, the will, the memory. They concluded that stopping the decay would stop the disappearance. But they were wrong. The decay was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was mortality itself, a principle that operated on a level deeper than tissue. The soul, the consciousness, the self, that vibrant, chaotic internal narrative is not a substance you can trap in natron and linen. You can have a perfectly preserved body, a masterpiece of taxidermy on a galactic scale, and yet have nothing but silence inside. The I is not in the preserved liver. It's not in the aromatic lungs. It's not in the still, resin-soaked heart. The spark is gone. All you have is the most beautiful, most solemn, most expensive sarcophagus in history for a flame that has already been extinguished. They deified the material, but the immaterial proved elusive. Their entire colossal effort was a hedge against a symptom. It was like building a fireproof, earthquake-proof, bomb-proof mansion around a candle, only to watch the candle flame gutter out from the simple, unmiraculous lack of oxygen. The enemy wasn't the wind or the rain, it was the nature of the flame itself. As the last resins hardened on the last great pharaoh's mask, a quiet question must have lingered in the air, a question that not even the most powerful spell from the Book of the Dead could answer. If not in the flesh, then where? If preserving the physical form to perfection still leaves us with only a magnificent shell, then where does the self truly reside? And if it resides elsewhere, can that elsewhere be touched, altered, perfected? This question would not die with the empire. It would migrate. It would slink out of the dry, orderly tombs of Egypt and find a new home in the sooty, chaotic, firelit cellars of a changing world. The focus would make a revolutionary shift. It would no longer be about preserving the vessel. The next generation of thinkers, the ones who inherited the Egyptians' failure, would ask a more dangerous, more fascinating question. What if we could transmute the contents? What if, instead of saving the old corruptible hardware, we could rewrite its fundamental code, upgrade it, turn the lead of mortal existence into the gold of something divine? The laboratory of salts and bandages would give way to the laboratory of furnaces and alembics. The engineer priest would be replaced by the alchemist magus. And the quest would evolve from the alchemy of flesh to the alchemy of the soul. The hunt was no longer for a perfect preservative. It was now for a catalyst that would trigger a transformation from one state of being to another. But that is a story for the next chamber in our journey. For now, the image remains, a silent, perfect, linen-wrapped form in the dark, waiting for a tenant who would never return, teaching us the first, hardest lesson in the search for forever. So, Where do you go? What do you do when you realize that preserving the container, no matter how perfectly, still leaves you with an empty vessel? The Egyptians built a forever home for the soul, only to discover the tenant was elusive. They had mastered the architecture of eternity, but the ghost in the machine had slipped their nets. Theirs was an error of location. They searched for immortality in the wrong place, in the stubborn, physical thingness of the body. The next wave of thinkers, the alchemists, made a brilliant, intuitive leap. They changed the search parameters entirely. If immortality isn't in the flesh, they reasoned, then perhaps the flesh itself must become something else. The goal was no longer preservation, it was transmutation. Welcome to the second laboratory. Stoke the fire in your imagination. Let's step inside the world of the alchemy of the soul. Forget the sterile, geometric certainty of the tomb. Here, in the cloistered scriptoriums of medieval monasteries, the vaulted workshops of Islamic savants in Baghdad, and the secret locked chambers of Renaissance adepts, the quest took a turn inward. The alchemists looked at the human condition, this messy, painful, glorious, and terminally brief experience, and saw not a corpse to be saved, but a puzzle to be solved. More than that, they saw a process. They looked at the world and saw a universe straining toward its own perfection. A lump of dull, gray lead in the earth, they believed, secretly yearned to be radiant, incorruptible gold. An acorn buried in the dark soil dreamt of being a sun-crowned oak. And the human soul, mired in the base metal of fear, ignorance, sin, and mortality, ached with a divine homesickness for a state of flawless, eternal being. Death to them wasn't a wall, it was a flaw in the material, a bug in the code. And they were the debuggers. Now, a crucial point before we go further. To dismiss the alchemists as mere primitive chemists, as foolish men trying to make gold from lead because they were greedy, is to miss the entire breathtaking scope of their project. That's like saying a poet is just someone arranging words for fun. They were philosophers, mystics, early psychologists, and artists, all using the only language they had for the invisible, the tangible, physical language of matter. Their quest for the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, was a metaphor made literal, a beautiful, dangerous, and profound metaphor. Think about the metaphors you use every day to describe your inner world. You have a heavy heart. You boil with anger. You feel tarnished by guilt or polished by a good deed. Someone has a sunny disposition or a bright mind. We speak of being tempered by hardship, like steel. The alchemists took this innate, human poetic impulse and ran with it. Straight into the laboratory, they asked, if the soul can be heavy with sin, then perhaps sin is a kind of spiritual dross, a dense impurity that could be burned away in the furnace of spiritual trial. If enlightenment is clarity, then maybe the path to it mirrors the distillation of a liquid. Heat it until it vaporizes, suffering, meditation. Separate it from impurities, sin, illusion. Let it condense pure wisdom. Repeat. Each cycle, a purification. Their lab was a chapel. Their experiments were liturgical rituals. Every tool was a sacred symbol. The alembic, that elegant glass still, wasn't just for distilling alcohol. It represented the human head, separating the volatile spirit from the gross, earthly body. The furnace was the purifying fire of tribulation, the trials that burn away the ego. The athanor, the self-feeding oven that maintained a constant, gentle heat for months on end, was the steadfast, nurturing heart, the discipline of constant will. And the mysterious prima materia, the first matter, the chaotic base of all creation, was, in its deepest sense, the unawakened human consciousness itself. The goal? The philosopher's stone, not necessarily a literal rock. It was described as a heavy crimson powder, a wax, a glass that glowed with internal light. It was the physical embodiment of perfection, the ultimate catalyst. Ingest it, and it would trigger a chain reaction within you. It wouldn't just make you live longer. It would transmute you. It would cure your mortal being of its fundamental flaw, turning the lead of your dying animal nature into the gold of an immortal spiritual entity. It promised not just an extension, but an upgrade. Let's make this personal. Let's not talk about the famous names yet. Let's step into the shoes of an apprentice. Let's call him Brother Bernard. He's in a small stone-walled room in a remote abbey, or perhaps a cluttered attic in a bustling German town. The air is warm and close. His hands are stained with the colors of his work: verdigris green, sulfur yellow, the deep black of powdered charcoal. Before him, a manuscript lies open, its pages filled not with clear instructions, but with bewildering, beautiful allegory. Take the flying eagle, the volatile spirit, and bind it to the steadfast green lion, the fixed body. Let them marry in the sealed bath of the sages. You will witness the glorious rainbow of the peacock's tail, which heralds the birth of the white stone. Nourish it with the milk of the virgin, and with the fire of the dragon, coax it to the red glory of the king. This is his recipe. This is his code. He is not just mixing chemicals. He is a detective in a sacred mystery, and every step is a meditation. He heats his mixture in a sealed flask, a hermetically sealed vessel, named for Hermes Trismegistus, the mythic founder of alchemy. This sealing is crucial. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. The transformation must happen within, a perfect mirror of the inner work. He watches for the stages, the great work in color, nigredo, the blackening. The matter putrefies, turns tar-like, foul, chaotic. To the uninitiated, a failure. To Bernard, it is necessary. It is the dark night of the soul, the death of the old self, the ego, the false identity, the putrefaction before new life. Albedo, the whitening. The black mass gives way to a pure, milky white. Purification, the soul washed clean, the moon reflecting the sun's light, a moment of crystalline clarity and peace. Citrinitas, the yellowing, the dawning of the spiritual intellect, the light of understanding growing from within. Rubedo, the reddening, the birth of the stone, the union of spirit and matter, male and female, sun and moon, the color of life, blood, gold, and royalty. The goal. This process, the magnum opus, could take years. It was cyclical. You'd calcine, burn to ash, dissolve, melt in liquid, separate, conjoin, ferment, distill, coagulate, and then start again at a higher level. Each cycle was meant to refine both the substance in the flask and the soul of the alchemist. You couldn't achieve the stone if you were greedy, impatient, or impure of heart. The work and the worker were transformed together. The laboratory was a feedback loop for the soul. Here is our hook. Here is the beautiful, tragic genius and the fatal flaw of Laboratory 2. The alchemists did something the Egyptians never conceived of. They internalized the quest. They understood intuitively that consciousness, the self, the soul, was the real battlefield. That immortality wasn't about dodging physical decay, but about achieving a state of being that rendered decay irrelevant. They mapped the psyche with a symbolic language more sophisticated than any before it. Carl Jung would later mine alchemical texts for insights into the process of individuation, the integration of the conscious and unconscious self into a whole person. The alchemists were proto-psychologists exploring the inner universe. But, and it's a monumental but, they made the soul a thing. In their desperate, poetic attempt to grasp the intangible, they materialized it. They tried to bottle enlightenment. They tried to find the stone, as if it were a lost key under a rock, rather than become the stone through a state of being. They sought an external agent, a powder, an elixir that would do the work to them. They looked for a spiritual shortcut in a physical crucible. This is the paradox that haunts every self-help book, every miracle diet, every buy this to transform your life product we see today. We want the state of fitness, so we buy the fancy gear that gathers dust. We want wisdom, so we buy the books that stay on the shelf. We want inner peace, so we book the retreat, hoping it will be injected into us. The alchemists, for all their profound insight, fell into this most human of traps, believing the deepest, most fundamental change can come from something you consume rather than something you undergo. Let's look at a real figure, one who embodies this tension perfectly. Paracelsus, 1493-1541. A revolutionary, arrogant, brilliant bomb of a man. He burned the canonical medical texts of his age in public. He insisted on observation and experience. He pioneered the use of specific chemicals as medicines, laying groundwork for modern pharmacology. He believed the body was a chemical workshop. He also believed in the archeus, a kind of internal alchemist that lived in your stomach, separating the pure from the impure in your food and, by extension, in your life. Disease was a kind of alchemical process gone wrong. To cure it, you needed the right chemical arcanum to guide your internal archeus back to harmony. This was a stunning internalization of alchemy. Health was an inner, alchemical balance. Yet, Paracelsus also spent a significant part of his life searching for the elixir of life. He wrote recipes for it. He believed it could be prepared from the quintessence of gold and other noble materials. He externalized the internal. He sought a physical potion to catalyze a spiritual perfection. He tried to find in a flask what he himself theorized was a state of internal balance. This is the core error of the alchemy of the soul. It's a more sophisticated, more introspective error than the Egyptians, but an error nonetheless. They charted the territory of transformation with breathtaking vision, but they kept looking for the territory outside the map. They kept trying to distill the soul from mercury and sulfur, to coagulate it from philosophical moonlight. The dream of the stone didn't die because chemistry proved it false. It faded because the worldview changed. The scientific revolution arrived. Sir Isaac Newton, the architect of classical physics, spent more time on alchemical manuscripts than on optics or calculus. He was the last great bridge. After him, science and spirit began their painful divorce. Chemistry became the study of external, measurable properties. The quest for the soul's immortality was left to organized religion or became purely philosophical. But the human desire didn't vanish. It just got a hardware upgrade. The alchemists failed to bottle consciousness. So the 20th century, with its characteristic blend of brutal pragmatism and sci-fi audacity, proposed a shocking new angle. If we can't perfect the soul, what if we just copy the mind? Forget elixirs, forget spiritual gold. The new immortalists looked at a human being and saw a system. The brain was the hardware. Memories, personality, experiences. That was the data, the software. And what is the cardinal rule of the digital age? You back up your data. The laboratory is about to change again. The warm, fire-lit chamber with its symbols and smells will give way to a sterile, cold room humming with electricity. The alembic will be replaced by the server rack. The quest will shift from the alchemy of the soul to the alchemy of memory. We will enter the realm of cryonic suspension, mind uploading, and digital avatars. It's a colder, harder dream, but is it any less a metaphor? And what is its foundational, potentially catastrophic error? That is the next step on our journey. But for now, let the image of Brother Bernard's furnace fade to embers. He sought the gold of the spirit, but in the end was left with only the faint, lingering smell of smoke and a profound realization. The map is not the territory. The most important transformation might be one that leaves no physical trace at all, except in the quiet, changed landscape of a life well lived. So, where do you go when the soul, that shimmering metaphorical target, proves too slippery to bottle? When the quest for internal gold yields only the same old leaden reality of decay? The alchemists made a map of the inner world so beautiful we still admire it today. But in their hunger to hold the territory, they tried to turn it into a physical substance. They tried to drink a state of being, and when that failed, when the age of reason declared their quest unscientific, the dream of immortality didn't die. It did something far more interesting. It pivoted. It looked at the staggering advances happening in the physical world, the understanding of electricity, the birth of computers, the cracking of the genetic code, and it asked a new, ruthlessly pragmatic question. A question that would make an Egyptian priest shudder and an alchemist weep in frustration. What if the soul is just data? Welcome to the third laboratory. Bundle up. It's cold in here. Welcome to the alchemy of memory. If Laboratory 1, Egypt, was about preserving the hardware, and Laboratory 2, alchemy, was about reprogramming the operating system, then Laboratory 3 is about something entirely different. It declares the hardware fundamentally flawed and doomed. It considers the operating system a fascinating but secondary concern. It focuses on one thing and one thing only: the data, your memories, your personality, the sum total of your experiences, your you-ness, encoded in the vast, wet neural network of your brain. The logic is seductive in its digital age clarity. Let's say your brain is a breathtakingly complex, organic laptop. It's fragile. It's subject to mechanical failure, water damage, strokes, power surges, seizures, and inevitable, irreversible battery decay, aging. The old methods tried to case the laptop in resin, Egypt, or upgrade its components with a magic paste, alchemy. The new method says, forget saving the machine. The machine is a lost cause. What's precious is the data on the hard drive, so let's make a copy. This is the core philosophy that birthed two main branches of modern immortalist thought: cryonics and mind uploading. They are two sides of the same coin, both united by the belief that the essence of a person is information, and information can, in principle, be preserved, transferred, and rebooted. Let's step into the first cold chamber. Cryonics. Imagine a hospital room, but one where the goal isn't healing, but pausing. The patient here is legally dead, but the proponents of cryonics make a critical distinction. Legal death is not information-theoretic death. The structure of the brain, the intricate wiring that holds the data of a lifetime, may still be largely intact at the moment the heart stops. The cryonicist's goal is to slam the brakes on decay at that precise moment, fast enough to preserve that neural structure. The process is a macabre, high-tech ballet. As soon as possible after declaration of death, a stabilization team begins. The body is cooled with ice packs. Blood circulation and oxygenation are artificially restored. A cocktail of anticoagulants and cryoprotectants, chemicals designed to prevent ice crystal formation, is pumped into the bloodstream. Ice crystals are the enemy. They are tiny daggers that would shred cell membranes, destroying the very neural architecture they're trying to save. Then the temperature plummets. The body is gradually cooled to the temperature of liquid nitrogen, 196 degrees Celsius to 321 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point, all molecular motion virtually stops. Chemical decay ceases. The patient is no longer frozen in the ice cube sense. They are vitrified, turned into a glass-like state, a solid, inert block of biological information, with cells and synapses preserved in a suspended, ultra-cold amber. They are then placed, head first or whole body, into a giant stainless steel vacuum flask called a dewaar, a sophisticated thermos flask large enough for a person. And there they wait, for decades, centuries, however long it takes. For what? The cryonicist's faith is placed in a future so advanced it seems like magic to us. Nanotechnology. The belief is that a future civilization, armed with molecular-scale machines, will be able to repair the cellular damage caused by the dying process and the vitrification itself. They will reverse the original cause of death: cancer, heart failure, old age. They will warm the patient, revive them, restore them to health and youth. It is the ultimate long-shot bet, a gamble on the exponential curve of technological progress. You are banking on a future that can fix anything, so you do the only thing you can do now. Hit pause and hand off the problem. Now shift from this stark, physical suspension to a more abstract but even more ambitious vision: mind uploading or whole brain emulation. If cryonics is about desperately preserving the original hard drive until we can fix it, uploading is about saying the hard drive is irrelevant. Just copy the data to a better system. This is the realm of futurists, neuroscientists, and computer engineers. The premise is that if we can map the connectome, the complete wiring diagram of every one of the brain's 86 billion neurons and their 100 trillion connections, and understand the computational principles at work, we could simulate that brain on a computer. Think about that. Not a copy of your memories like a photo album, but a functional simulation of your consciousness. Your thoughts, your quirks, your fears, your sense of self, running on silicon instead of carbon. This digital you could then live in a virtual paradise, control a robotic body on Earth, or be beamed across the galaxy as a stream of light. Death becomes a solvable data transfer problem. Proponents like Ray Kurzweil speak of the singularity, a point where technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. A key feature of this envisioned future is the ability to upload one's consciousness, achieving a form of digital immortality. It's the ultimate backup. Your biological body is the original, fragile manuscript. The upload is the perfect, infinitely copyable, and distributable digital file. Here is the hook. Here is the dazzling promise and the profound, chilling error of Laboratory 3. The alchemy of memory is the most logical, the most technologically audacious, and in some ways, the most arrogant of the labs so far. It looks at the heartbreaking failures of the past, the silent mummies, the failed elixirs, and says, "We have the tools you lacked. We speak the language of information. We will not be defeated by biology." Its promise is intoxicating. It offers a way out that doesn't rely on vague spirituality or magical substances, but on the relentless, proven march of engineering and computer science. It turns the problem of death from a philosophical tragedy into a technical challenge. And humanity is good at technical challenges. But, and this but is so fundamental, it threatens to unravel the entire project. The error of Laboratory 3 is the confusion of the map for the territory. It assumes that by copying the structure of the brain, the connectome, the neural firing patterns, you are copying the substance of consciousness. This is known as the computational theory of mind. It assumes your mind is a software program that just happens to be running on the wetware of the brain. Change the hardware, keep the software code the same, and you will persist. But what if consciousness isn't just information processing? What if it is embodied? What if the feeling of being you isn't just a result of neural computations, but is inextricably tied to the physical, biological, living body, to the hum of your hormones, the rhythm of your heart, the feedback loop between your gut and your brain, The way you experience the world through senses that are not just inputs, but active, participatory engagements. An uploaded copy of your Connect to Me might perfectly mimic your responses. It might recall your childhood birthday party with perfect fidelity. It might even say it feels like you. But is it experiencing, or is it just running a breathtakingly complex simulation of experience? Is it a living consciousness or a philosophical zombie? An entity that acts exactly like it's conscious but has no inner light? This is the hard problem of consciousness made terrifyingly practical. You might create a perfect digital replica of your grandfather. It has all his memories, his wit, his love for birdwatching. But is it him, or is it just a monument, a shadow in a machine? If the original biological grandfather dies, has he survived in the upload, or has a new, eerily similar entity simply been created? This isn't a backup. At best, it's a fork. At worst, it's a facsimile that mourns its own original. Cryonics faces a related but different version of this problem. Let's say the future nanotechnology works. They repair every frozen cell. They restart your heart. You wake up. Are you the one who wakes up? Or is it a copy built from your preserved template? The continuity of consciousness, that unbroken stream of subjective experience, was severed at the moment of legal death and vitrification. If that stream is what defines the self, then the revived patient is a new consciousness inhabiting a reconstructed body. A twin born from a paused template. The alchemy of memory, for all its scientific sheen, makes the same categorical error as the alchemists, just with a modern toolkit. The alchemists tried to turn the soul into a physical elixir. The digital immortalists try to turn consciousness into pure information. Both are attempts to objectify the subjective, to take the first-person experience of being, the only thing we ever truly know, and reduce it to a third-person thing we can manipulate, a powder, a data set. It seeks immortality not for the living, feeling being, but for a description of that being. And so we stand here in the humming cold of the cryonics facility or the sterile glow of the server farm, facing a new kind of silence. Not the silence of the tomb, nor the disappointed silence of the cooled furnace, but the silent, whirring hum of a machine preserving or simulating a pattern, while the ghost in the machine, the what it is like to be, remains as elusive as ever. The quest, however, is relentless. If copying the software seems fraught with philosophical peril, what about going deeper? What about rewriting the source code itself? Not the data of the mind, but the fundamental blueprint of the body that generates the mind? This realization leads us out of the cold storage vault and into the most intimate, most powerful laboratory yet, the very core of life. The next chapter won't be about preserving hardware, reprogramming software, or backing up data. It will be about editing the source code. It will take us from the steel doers to the double helix, from information theory to biology. The question will shift once more. If we can't save the machine or copy the program perfectly, can we at least patch the bugs that cause it to crash? Can we hack our own genome to extend its runtime indefinitely? But that is a story written in the language of proteins and nucleotides. For now, let the cold hum of Laboratory 3 linger. It offers a vision of forever that is clean, logical, and devoid of mystery. And perhaps in that lack of mystery lies its greatest failure. For in seeking to make immortality a data problem, it may have lost the very thing it was trying to save, the profound, inexplicable, and utterly non-digital wonder of being alive, here, now, in a fragile, feeling body. So, where do you turn when the map of the mind proves too complex to copy? When the dream of uploading your consciousness crashes into the hard problem of what consciousness even is? The digital immortalists offered a vision of eternity as a clean, logical data transfer. But in doing so, they risk creating a perfect statue of a person while losing the person themselves. Theirs was an error of abstraction. They tried to lift the flame from the candle and put it in a light bulb, forgetting that the flame is defined by the very act of consuming the wax. But there is another path, one that doesn't require preserving the hardware, reprogramming the OS, or backing up the data. It's a path that's been whispering to us since the first human looked at their child and saw their own eyes staring back. It's older than Egypt, more fundamental than alchemy, and more intimate than any server farm. It's the path of the bloodline, the code within the code. Welcome to the fourth laboratory. It's not a tomb, a furnace, or a server room. It's a nursery. It's a family kitchen. It's the very chain of life, stretching backward and forward in time. Welcome to the alchemy of blood. If the previous labs were about saving or transcending the self, this lab is about something more humble and more grand, perpetuating the pattern. It declares, perhaps true immortality isn't about the indefinite survival of the individual spark, but about the unbroken transmission of the flame. You are not the fire. You are a carrier of the torch. This is the realm of genetics, and its logic is as old as life itself. Immortality, the continuation of the genetic code. For most of human history, this was the only immortality on offer, and it was understood instinctively, poetically. You lived on in your children. Your blood flowed in their veins. Your nose, your laugh, your stubbornness echoed in a new generation. This is horizontal immortality, moving sideways through time in the bodies of your descendants. It's the immortality of legacy, of lineage, of the family name. But the 20th century cracked open the sacred text. Watson, Crick, Franklin, and Wilkins unveiled the structure of DNA. Suddenly, the blood became a script. The family resemblance became a precise chemical code. The torch was no longer a metaphor. It was a double helix, a twisted ladder of nucleotides where the rungs were made of adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Our very essence, it seemed, was written in a four-letter alphabet. This discovery birthed a new, potent, and deeply unsettling branch of the immortalist quest. If the code is what matters, and we can read it, can we edit it? This splits the alchemy of blood into two distinct, powerful streams. Stream 1, the ancient compulsion, children and clones. Let's start with the ancient way. You have a child. In that child, roughly half of your genetic code is mixed with another's and passed on. Your specific combination, the unique shuffle of the deck that made you, is broken apart, but fragments persist. Your mother's eyes, your father's temper, a snippet of your grandfather's musicality. It's a dilution, but also a dissemination. You become a ghost in the gene pool, a whisper in future generations. But what about a perfect copy? Enter the clone. The concept is the ultimate expression of genetic immortality. Create a new being with an identical genetic code to your own, a delayed identical twin. For a moment in the early 2000s, with Dolly the sheep, it seemed like the gateway was open. If you couldn't upload your mind, perhaps you could simply reprint your body. This is where we hit our first hook, the deep, resonant ache at the center of this form of immortality. Let's say you clone yourself. The clone is born decades after you. It has your face, your genetic predisposition for curly hair or perfect pitch. But it is not you. It is a new person, born into a different time, shaped by different experiences, with a different consciousness behind those familiar eyes. You have created a genetic monument, not a continuation of yourself. You have transmitted your blueprint, but your memories, the lived experience, the story written on that blueprint, die with you. This is the poignant failure of the clone as an immortality vehicle. It preserves the hardware schematic perfectly, but the software, the data of a lifetime, is not included. The clone is a new book printed from the same typeface, but with blank pages. Your story remains untold, locked in a brain that will turn to dust. Stream 2, the modern ambition, gene editing and biological hackery. Dissatisfied with the lottery of inheritance or the empty vessel of a clone, modern science has spawned a more direct approach. Don't just pass on the code, fix the bugs in your own. This is the promise of gene therapy, CRISPR-Cas9, and the field of regenerative medicine. The logic here is engineering grade. We age and die because of accumulated damage. Telomeres shorten, DNA mutates, cells senesce, tissues fail. These are not mystical curses. They are mechanistic failures. So what if we treat the human body as the most complex machine we own and perform maintenance? What if we could edit out genetic diseases like Huntington's or cystic fibrosis, lengthen telomeres to keep cells dividing healthily, activate stem cells to repair damaged organs, delete the senescence program that makes old cells toxic? This isn't about living forever in a decrepit body. It's about achieving longevity escape velocity. A concept where for every year you live, science advances enough to give you more than a year of additional healthy life. You outrun the Grim Reaper not by sprinting, but by constantly accelerating. You don't cure aging, you continually repair it. This is the dream of figures like Aubrey de Grey and his SENS Research Foundation, Strategies for Engineered Negligible Senescence. It's a vision of immortality not as a static state, but as an active process of maintenance. You become the curator of your own biology. The alchemist's furnace is now your own cellular machinery. The Philosopher's stone is a viral vector delivering corrected DNA. Here is the hook. Here is the powerful, seductive, and fundamentally biological promise, and the devastating philosophical shortfall of Laboratory 4. The alchemy of blood is the most visceral, the most real of the labs so far. It doesn't deal with myths of souls or abstractions of data. It deals with the tangible molecules of life itself. Its promise is immense, a healthy, vibrant life extended for centuries. Not as a mummy, not as a digital ghost, but as a living, breathing, biological human. It offers to fix the machine so it never breaks down. But, and this but strikes at the very core of identity. The error of Laboratory 4 is the belief that you are your genome. Yes, your genes dictate your height, your eye color, your metabolic quirks, your predisposition to disease or genius. They are the foundational script. But you, the person who loves a specific song, who remembers the smell of rain on a childhood street, who fears abandonment, who finds joy in bad puns, are not just the script. You are the performance. You are the unique, irreproducible interpretation of that script, shaped by a lifetime of experiences, choices, traumas, loves, and random cosmic luck. A genetically perfect you, edited to live 500 years, would not be the you who lived the first 40. Those formative years, the bullies in the schoolyard, the first heartbreak, the unexpected kindness from a stranger, those are not in your genes. They are in your memories, your neural pathways, your epigenetics, the chemical markers on your DNA that turn genes on-off based on experience. You could reset the body, but you cannot reset the story without erasing the self. Furthermore, this path leads to a terrifying question. If we can edit any gene, what do we become? The pursuit of biological perfection becomes a new kind of alchemy with its own philosophical poison. Do we edit out undesirable traits? Where is the line between therapy and enhancement? Between healing and eugenics? Do we risk creating a world of genetic haves and have-nots? The quest to conquer death could create new, profound inequalities in life. And most personally, even if you succeed, even if you maintain this biological machine for 300 years, you are still trapped within a single continuous consciousness. You would bear the weight of all those centuries. Friends, lovers, children, entire cultures would rise and fall around you. The psychological toll of such longevity is unimaginable. Would you even remain human in mindset after such a span? Or would you become something else? A lonely curator of an ever-growing museum of loss? The alchemy of blood offers to make the candle burn indefinitely by constantly replenishing the wax and trimming the wick. But it cannot protect the flame from the wind of time, from the slow, accumulated soot of memory, from the sheer weariness of burning for so long. So here we stand at the edge of biology. We have tried to preserve the vessel, transmute its contents, copy its data, and now endlessly repair its machinery. And with each step, we've come closer to longevity, yet somehow further from the essence of what we were trying to save. The specific, subjective, glorious I that exists right here, right now, knowing it will end. But what if we've been looking at the problem backwards? What if immortality was never about the duration of the self, but about its impact? What if the final and perhaps only true laboratory isn't a place you go, but something you create in the world? This realization pulls us out of the bloodstream, out of the body entirely, and into the most elusive and powerful realm of all, the realm of ideas, of art, of action. The final chapter won't be about cheating death, but about defying its meaning. It won't focus on extending a single life, but on weaving that life so deeply into the fabric of everything that follows, that its end becomes a transformation, not a terminus. But that is a story written not in genes, but in legacy. For now, let the sound of the heartbeat linger. It is a rhythm that connects you to the deepest past and the furthest future. It carries a code, but you are more than that code. You are the song it sings just once in all of time. And perhaps the beauty and the tragedy of that single fleeting song is the very thing that makes it precious. So where have we come from? We've come a long way. We descended into silent, incense-soaked crypts, where eternity was measured in kilometers of flax and tons of salt. We sat in smoky laboratories where alchemists tried to extract the secret of eternal life from lead and mercury, believing that the soul is the recipe. We were frozen in steel sausages where hope became a function of temperature, minus 196 degrees Celsius. We peered into the endless DNA spiral, looking for the magic editing point that would turn off death itself. We were looking for immortality with a capital letter, in the flesh, in the spirit, in memory, in the genes. And every time we got close, we ran into the same unsolvable wall. The wall called I. The Egyptians preserved the vessel, but the I is not a vessel. Alchemists were looking for an elixir for the soul, but I is not a substance that can be transfused. Cryonics and transhumanists want to copy the data, but the I is not the data, it is the experience of the data. Geneticists suggest fixing the car forever, but I am not a car. It is a passenger who looks out the window of this car for a single, unique route. I is a mystery happening here and now, at the intersection of memories, feelings, hopes, and the very quiet voice that speaks these words in your head. It cannot be preserved, it cannot be transplanted, it cannot be archived, because the moment you do this, you will no longer be working with him, but with his cast, with a photo of the flame. And so, after all this journey through centuries and laboratories, I come to a simple, ancient as the world, and perhaps the only correct conclusion. The only working formula for immortality that I have found does not require natron, philosopher's stone, liquid nitrogen, or CRISPR. It requires only one thing: attention. Tell your story to anyone who wants to hear it. That's all. That's all the magic. Think about it. What is happening at this very moment? I'm telling a story. the story of our journey through these laboratories of despair and hope. And you're listening. You are giving me the most valuable thing you have at this moment, your attention, a piece of your consciousness, yourself. And something amazing is happening. My thought, my voice, the images that I tried to paint with words, they cease to be just mine. They resonate in you. They relate to your own memories, your fears, your thoughts about life and death. They enter into a dialogue with your inner world. And at that moment, a piece of this story, no, not even the story itself, but the meaning, the feeling that stands behind it, flows into you. It becomes part of your inner landscape, a part of yourself. I have not given you my soul. I did not copy my consciousness into your brain, but I planted an idea in him. Image, question. And as long as you remember this conversation, as long as somewhere in the depths of your memory you will have this warm, nocturnal tone, the image of a lonely alchemist at the furnace or the cold shine of a cryostat, this part lives. She lives in you. It becomes a tiny thread in the vast, eternal fabric of human experience. Now imagine that tomorrow you will tell someone you care about something important, about my love, about your fear, about a funny incident from childhood, about the smell of bread in your grandmother's bakery. You will share a piece of yourself. And if they really hear you, and I'm sure they will, that piece will live on in two people. Then at 4, at 10 o'clock, your genes may be passed on to children. Your photos will remain in the cloud. But your story, your unique, subjective truth about the world is the only way it's conveyed. Through trust, through the silence between two people, through a look that has understanding. This is the very immortality, not a personal, selfish, eternal self. It's ecosystem-based. The immortality of meaning passing from consciousness to consciousness. The immortality of influence. The immortality of the echo. The pharaoh whose name is carved in stone is dead. But the pharaoh whose story touches the heart of a schoolboy reading about him by the light of a desk lamp is alive. He is alive in the wonder of this child. The alchemist whose works were burned is dead. But the alchemist whose metaphor of inner transformation helps someone through a difficult period is alive. He is alive in this man's epiphany. We are all storytellers, and we are all listeners. We are temporary vessels for eternal stories, love, loss, hope, and search. Our task is not to preserve the vessel, but to convey the plot. Like a baton. And right now, in this quietest moment, that's exactly what's happening. I'm passing this baton on to you. A story about the search for eternity, which ends with a simple discovery. Eternity is created here and now, in the act of shared attention. Now this story is both mine and yours. A piece of her will stay with you, and that means she will live as long as you live. And your stories, your impressions, will live on in those to whom you decide to tell them. And this is not a metaphor. This is the most practical, most feasible, and most profound form of immortality available to us. Immortality is not about lasting forever, but about meaning. To leave a mark on the fabric of the world not by a tyrant or a genius, but simply by a person who was understood by another person. Your eyelids are probably getting heavier now. Breathing is smoother and deeper. The dark, warm space around you hugs you tighter and tighter. It's good. This means that our journey has come to its natural, quiet end. Not to the finale, but to a pause. Let that feeling, the feeling that you're part of something big, this chain of storytellers and listeners, let it lull you to sleep. Let go of all thoughts about tomorrow's business. Let even this story go. Let it float away into the depths of your memory like a ship in a fog. She's safe. She's with you now. Let your consciousness, this amazing one-of-a-kind light, slowly and smoothly go to sleep. You have done the most important thing today. You have lived another day. You've listened to the story. You have become her guardian. That's enough. You have done your part in the universe. Tomorrow when you wake up, a new day of your personal ecosystem immortality will begin. A new day in which you can share something of yourself, to hear someone, leave a mark a little kinder than yesterday. And before you finally sail off to the land of dreams, I have two small, very important requests for you. They are as much a part of this ecosystem as the story itself. First, if this quiet place, our shared night birth, has become something valuable for you, if you want these trips to continue, please subscribe to the channel. It's not just a button, it's your nod in the dark. A flashlight signal. I'm here. I need this place. Keep going. For a channel that lives not on high-profile monetization, but on general interest, this nod is everything. He tells the algorithms that there are those here who need to think and dream before going to bed. This is your vote to ensure that such conversations do not stop in the world. And the second one, when you have a minute, check out the comments. Write something. Optional Chong Pien Da, long essay. You can just say, thank you. Or tell me which of the laboratories, Egyptian, alchemical, cryonics, genetic, or this latest one about stories, touched you the most. Share if you want your bedtime ritual, or just write, I was here. Why is this so important? Because when I record these words, I look into the microphone in the silence of my room, and your comments, your words, are the very voices from the darkness in response. They turn a monologue into a dialogue. They create the very community of listeners and storytellers that I'm talking about. They remind me and everyone who comes later that we are not alone, that there are other people around the world at this hour who also like to fall asleep to a good story. You become a part of the history of this channel. Your eye leaves its own small but important mark here. Thank you. Thank you for this time. For your attention, it is the most valuable gift in our short, noisy life. Now let go. Let your breathing become very deep. Let the heavy, warm eyelids finally close. You're safe. The story is told. It's yours now, too, and she will live. Good night to you. See you again in the world of dream and in new stories.